Hey guys, what's up? My name is Giga, and today I will be doing an interview with the newest NKT instructor from South Africa, Ayla Caldwell. I learned about Ayla from my last interview I did with David Weinstock, who is also the founder of neurokinetic therapy, and we were discussing what is the recipe for success. And David really strongly emphasized that hard work is above everything else. And then David mentioned his newest NKT instructor from South Africa and her amazing story. And we will watch the short clip of that interview.
And let me say something about that. Some of the best NKT practitioners in the world are not the smartest and most talented, but what they are is the most hardworking. Those are the ones that I respect the most. And speaking of which, my newest instructor, Ayla Caldwell, is in South Africa. Mm-hmm. She was born deaf and with a speech impediment. Now, how did I pick somebody like that to teach, right? So I didn't get to meet her personally, but we Zoomed many times. And there was just something about her that I really, really liked and admired. And you know what it was? She had worked so hard to overcome her deficits. She's just incredible. And so when I prepped her to teach level 1 for the first time, I told her to tell the students about her impediments, right? Mm. And that if she didn't hear them, to speak louder, that the assistants would help her if they needed to. And she laid her soul bare for them to see, and they fell in love with her. And she is a fantastic instructor. And why? Because she has had to work so much harder than almost anybody else that I know to make herself into the person that she is. So to me, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. I respect that.
Now, after that David's comment, I received a lot of emails and comments about who is this amazing instructor, and it led up for me just to contacting her and set up an interview, and this is what you're going to watch next. So, interview with Ayla Caldwell from South Africa. Enjoy.
No, thank you, Jigga, for contacting me.
So, David already mentioned that you were born deaf, and you had a speech impediment because of it. And can you share a little bit more about how your coming into this world was for you? So maybe your experience of being disabled in a way of not be able to hear, and how was your transitioning into teenage years with that disability?
Of course. We don't actually know what caused the hearing disability. I was actually more born with too much fluid in my lungs, and they had to get that out. So there were drain pipes on the sides. Took about a month for the lung to stabilize. And then my grandmother recognized my hearing disability, must have been around about 2, or as I started speaking, and she whispered to me, but I didn't respond. And then she'd say the same thing again, and I responded. That was when my family recognized that I had a hearing disability, and it seemed to mainly be just on the high frequencies. My low frequency sounds are actually quite loud. I remember my mom mentioning that I would hear a truck coming down the road before everyone else, and I'd suddenly jump up and I go, what's that sound? And she would have to listen to hear, oh, it's a truck, Ayla, it's okay. So I got hearing aids when I was around about 4, but I have to say I hated them. They are not the most comfortable things to wear, and I didn't know how to work with them. So when I was about age 8, I decided, and I told my mother that I'm not wearing them, I hate them, and I'm going to live without them. So she was supportive, and she said, okay, that's fine. as long as you can cope and you'll manage. And I said, no, I can do this. And I did. I made it work for myself. It certainly was harder in schooling. Um, I am a twin sister, so I have a twin, and I did depend on her a lot. That you could say was a pro as well as a con. Certain aspects made it easy, other aspects made myself lazier in some ways. But I always had her to fall back on. And her support definitely allowed me to work out how to operate with others despite the hearing aids. Funny enough, through my teenage years, I reached the point where I recognized that I always only looked at the lips. It was in a stage where the girls started talking about one of the guy's eyes and how beautiful the guy's eyes were. And I suddenly realized I had no idea what his eyes looked like. And that was when I recognized that I didn't look a person in the eyes. So I started to change it because I wanted to at least look at people in the eyes. And I started to change the way I operated. So I tried to heighten myself when someone called. And it's interesting because it is the consistency and the repetition of making something change that actually created a positive outcome. And my hearing almost got better, but it probably wasn't hearing getting better, with more my focus and my attention. And so that would be my progression through teenage on a hearing basis.
What I'm really interested about, how did you found it, the schooling process different for you comparing to your other classmates who didn't have your problem? I suppose you were at the regular program.
It was a lot harder. It would have been much easier if I had worn the hearing aids earlier. Because the one thing that I did recognize when I started wearing hearing aids again. So I started wearing hearing aids again about 3 years ago. I didn't wear them from about age 8 up until 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I recognized is how much pressure it took off my brain on having to concentrate and having to listen and being able to hear someone if I wasn't facing them. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I developed as a teenager is I always made sure, or tried to make sure, that I was facing someone when they spoke. Because if someone spoke behind me, I could not hear them at all. Whereas with the hearing aids, I can. So I gave myself a lot harder time than I necessarily needed to through the schooling work, because if the teacher was on the other side of the classroom or I was sitting further back, I really did battle to hear, and I didn't like to ask too many questions or to make my situation obvious. So often would, if I missed out on something, I would tend to have an attitude of, I'll figure it out, I'll ask my sister or I'll ask someone and work it out along the way. So I certainly didn't get any extra special attention. A lot of people actually didn't realize that I had a hearing disability unless you interacted with me closely, or if I was very focused in my work and a teacher was trying to get my attention, often the entire class had to shout to get my attention. I go, oh, okay. So kids were quite confused about that. And yeah, it was very interesting when I did put the hearing aid back in 3 years ago. The funniest one was I realized how clumsy I was with dishes. And it was because I couldn't hear them. So I would just put a dish down and it was a loud bang, but to me that was normal. And the minute I had the hearing aid, aids, I was realizing, oh my goodness, everything's so loud and I can't put a dish down carefully because I had actually never developed the motor control to do it. So it's interesting, just even from an NKT perspective, of how the nervous system responds to different stimulus. And so it took me about a month for my brain to just rework out all the different sounds and stimulus that were coming. I couldn't even listen to music for about a month. I had to, it was sounding distorted to me. So yeah, I definitely would have had a much easier time in school if I had worn the hearing aid the whole time. But I guess there's where there are, it can take time for many of us to actually accept and be willing to, yeah, be the disability that you are, or to not be ashamed of the disability that you have. And it also took me quite a long time to recognize that people are understanding. So especially kids, it can be quite hard growing up, and especially around kids and sometimes with um, relatives or family or people that battle to relate to what the disability is. And they get impatient, and I can understand it can be a bit hard for them, especially when I didn't concentrate a lot and someone would ask me a question and I'd go, what? And they would ask again and I'd go, what? And instead of really getting my attention and going, Ayla, you have to focus, and I listen and then say it, I had to learn to recognize that I need to take responsibility for what is not there. I was trying to operate as everyone else, and everyone else functions fine. So I just assumed I could function fine. But it had an impact on me, and it gave everyone else a hard time. And when I was willing to own up to that and recognize that I needed the help, and it was easier to just give my body that help of the hearing aids, and a lot of things became much easier for me.
What kind of qualities, mental muscles, characteristics did you gain out of it and you recognize today?
Um, it's definitely an interesting question because, yeah, I haven't thought a lot about it other than we discussed a little bit on it. And yes, the one thing that does seem to, I feel, has come out of it is an element of problem solving, where I have recognized, I have actually taken it on, and I've recognized where if I'm presented with something, I don't fully know what to do, but I'm willing to work out and figure out wherever I can, to be able to achieve what needs to be done. Um, so yeah, I didn't do brilliantly in school. There were definitely things that I missed, but I certainly never failed. I managed to get through all my grades.
I think that problem-solving characteristic is one of the things even David noticed about you, because you have to really work hard because of your deficits, and like you said, you never failed, and that is amazing.
Yes, no, definitely. And I think you're right. I tend to not notice it as much as I do.
You know the how I don't notice that I'm hearing normally, it comes normal for me. You don't notice how amazing problem solving skills you have because that is normal for you, and a lot of the majority of people don't have this and are just fixated on the problem, but there are so many solutions out there. You just have to focus your mind to it. If we continue our conversation with, so we have this like brain muscles, your character development, your problem solving skills, but how did your body went through your teenage years or young adult years, or now, did you have any problems growing up with pain or movement disabilities, or was it just in your ears?
Definitely. So the movement and the pain that I feel I experienced was a combination of the problems that I've had from birth, where we had the PAPs, the drain PAPs. I've also recognized that my right lung doesn't work as efficiently as the left. So breathing has been quite a challenge for me. The doctor did say that I was only going to have half a lung up until 8. Apparently told my mum that all the alveoli in the right lung had been damaged, but would regrow, but it would take 8 years to grow back. It never really affected me too badly growing up, other than I would say in the growth spurt of the teenage years. However, I think that we've coupled with as a horse rider, having quite a few accidents and concussions. So my body's been through some beatings along the way from physical perspectives, just from injuries. But yeah, so a lot of that, again, that I suppose combining what we've just spoken about, which was the problem solving, and thinking on it now, I actually applied that exact structure to how to resolve my situation. So I started off with the Pilates, more because I didn't know what else to do. My mom suggested it. We had a very good instructor that we were in connection with at the time. And that instructor helped, she encouraged me to do Pilates. And so I learned Pilates first because she felt I would be a very good instructor, actually. Again, I didn't know what to do. I was sort of a little bit at a loss at that time. And she said, no, I think study Pilates. You'll be really good. I feel you've got a good connection of being able to pick up what needs to be worked on. I went, okay, all right. So I tried it, kind of going, okay, well, I don't know, but it did. It turned out really well. The training was really hard for me. I did the MathWork certification, and I actually I took a month off my certification hours just to try and strengthen my body up. And I did like twice a week sessions to get stronger so that I could actually do the exercises in the advanced MathWork repertoire. And I did it. It wasn't perfect, but I did it. However, after that, I was still battling with a lot of my back pain. And another client introduced me to a technique called the Egoscu method, which works on postural alignment as well, but the exercises are simpler. So they were a little bit easier for me to do, and they had an exact sequence, a menu, and an exact sequence of exercises that get done repetitively. And through that repetition, the brain and the body learns and changes into a more functional state. And so I kept looking and finding things that would solve my problems. And so Pilates for me was a fantastic start, and it got me out of spasms in my back. But again, I was still sitting with something of back pain and battling. So I went and I read the Egoscu stuff. It resonated with me. And I find anything that resonates with me, I'm like, okay, well, let me try, let's work it out, let's give it a go. I spent 6 months doing the same menu, really dedicatedly. Life was a bit easier at that time, not as busy. And I would get home, I'd cook myself some dinner, I'd have a shower, and it was winter, so it was cold at that time. I'd have a shower, get into my dressing gown, do my exercise routine, which took about an hour, and then climb into bed at about 10:30, go to sleep. And that was my daily routine for about 6 months. And it I noticed the changes. And as I noticed the changes, that made me more dedicated to keep going. And I realized it was working. But then I also recognized that it hit a point where things were still not working, or things were still not quite solving themselves. And that was when I came across the NKT. And I remember reading the post, I remember reading the information. I bought David's book, his master testing book. I went, this is so awesome, but my goodness, it makes no sense. What am I supposed to do with it?
Yeah, the book never makes sense. I also bought the book and I thought everything will be in the book, and then I was so disappointed.
Yes.
But after you go to the course, you know what the book is really about and how genius the book is, with the course, with the knowledge you get on the course. Yeah, I totally get you.
No, exactly. So then, yeah, and the more I read the post, the more I read about scars and the impact of scars, the more that resonated with me on, okay, this is going to work. I need to now work out. That is where a lot of my problem is. I'm not solving the problems that the scars are affecting on me. And yeah, so then that was my drive to um, do the courses. And I was very lucky. I had a great support for that, where a friend of my fiance's, he said to me, and I spoke to him about the course and the technique, and he was like, that's very interesting. Good. Okay, so when are you going to do it? I said, all right, well, I've got to work out some finances and I'm just saving up and then I'll do it. And he goes, is money your only problem? Well, I kind of needed to travel overseas to do the course. And he said, no, man, money's your only problem. Then, make a plan, work out a solution. He said, I'll lend you the money.
Excellent.
Okay, all right. And yeah, so he gave me the offer. But again, I had to take it up and make it work. He wasn't going to do anything further than that. The offer was there, and I had to work out how I was going to do it. What was I going to do? What was my payment plan? And take it from there. If I wasn't going to do anything with the offer, he wasn't going to do anything further than that. So it was a very inspirational. It was an interesting aspect, actually, if I think about it, where he also had quite a problem-solving mindset in a lot of ways, but it was just on a bigger scale than I was thinking of, where, yes, it was exactly the same thing. You have something, there's a problem. Okay, well, what is the solution going to be? And I just wasn't thinking in a big concept like that. I hadn't quite gotten to that big concept yet. So it was a really beautiful thing to have happen, because it just contributed and added to my, I suppose, my whole problem solving skills as I went along.
Do you think you went into this career maybe because of your understanding of the suffering and the limitations? And do you think you're maybe a better therapist or listener or instructor to the clients who come to you because of that situation, because of your life story?
I do believe in certain aspects it has helped. And the reason I say that is because I can actually relate to it from a hearing perspective. I'm going to go along that line, because it's been quite interesting. Just over the last year or so, I've helped or spoken to a couple of people, elder people who have landed up with hearing disability during or hearing loss due to age. And the one thing that I recognized and I feel impacted myself as well as my mother when I started with hearing aids is there are not a lot of audiologists that wear hearing aids. They have all the skills, they have all the knowledge about hearing aids and hearing, but they don't have the experience of what it's like wearing hearing aids, or the process that you have to go through to be able to allow your brain to adjust. And a lot of older people have a hard time with that, where they will put a hearing aid in and they suddenly go, oh my God, everything's so loud. I can't stand the sound of the traffic in the car, or I can't stand the noise within a restaurant. And they just go, I can't deal with this. And they stop and they take the hearing aid away. But what they're not understanding is how you have to go, the brain and everything within the physical structure of the body has to go through a change and a process to reorganize itself. And when they've come to speak with me, or when I've spoken to them, I've been able to give them that experience of how it took time for my brain to change. And as a child, I couldn't understand that. There was no one to explain that to me. And I sat with the same problem. I didn't like the sound. I didn't like the discomfort of the hearing aids. I didn't know how to work with any of it. It was almost a bit too overwhelming and bombarding. And it made me feel very unsafe and unsettled. But as an adult, when I was able to recognize and work through it, and I had someone that was able to tell me at the time what I was going to go through, it makes it much easier, and it makes it a process of, yeah, like you were saying, you can relate to someone. So you can help them understand what you're going to go through so that you don't get that discomfort, that level of unsafety that makes people want to resist and back off or battle with the courage to push through. And definitely on my work, I know that I helped one client in particular where she had a situation, unfortunately, of breast cancer, and she had the breast taken away as well as 6 ribs. So she was sitting with quite a heavy dysfunction from a physical perspective. And her and I were able to relate to each other in a much stronger way than any other therapist that she worked with. Obviously, my situation is not to the extent of hers, but I could understand what she was feeling. I could understand the pain she was getting in her spine. And I could also, in a lot of ways, recognize and understand what her body was feeling. I could almost feel the sensations in the same way, and that would help and allow between the two of us to realize or work out what her body needed to help be able to maintain itself despite the missing structures.
That is the subconscious part of your brain connecting to the client. It's a very, very, very interesting thing you're talking about now. It's empathy towards the client, and basically feeling her, putting yourselves into her shoes to understand her situation better. That basically makes you a better therapist, a better provider, a better instructor, because it's so interesting. Even with the neurokinetic therapy, we're doing therapy with the client, not to the client. But tell me, what makes you the most happy working with client?
The amazing outcomes, and I would say, no, let me, it's an outcome, but also, now that you're making me think about it, it's the enjoyment of seeing their pain change. So the weight lifted when there's an ease and a ability to be able to relax and feel safe, because now that pain and that weight is lifted. And that, I would say, actually probably bring the most enjoyment for me, because again, I can relate to that. The being able to have the differentiation of when you're in pain as opposed to when you're out of pain, and the relief, the amount of relief that you get from those changes and that success, and being able to go, wow, okay, I can offer it and I can live without this pain, is incredible to see in the clients as well.
That's an amazing gift to be able to give to a fellow person, fellow human being. And I can totally relate to you, to your words, because my work is pretty much very similar. And you can see the change in the eyes.
Yes.
You can see the change in the eyes. And what I find with my work also, they can see hope. So when we start, I always say I never work with anybody who I know I cannot help. And it's so interesting how people hear a lot of the times, oh, your diagnosis is incurable, your situation, cannot be fixed, or you're in a wheelchair, or you have MS, or you have Parkinson's, there's nothing we can do. And when people start believing that, it's basically a death sentence for them. And I believe I'm a strong believer in, no matter what your diagnosis is, don't get married to it. It's really important to know your diagnosis, because if you have a broken arm, it's very important to know your arm is broken. Or if you have a broken rib, that you just didn't slept weird, that you have to see a doctor. But whatever the diagnosis is, it will be healed in 6 months if there is a physical injury. And if you got a diagnosis that cannot be healed, it can always be supported by functional muscle movement, strength, and positive mindset. Because what I find with people is, if they lose hope, if they start to believe the stories, they're telling them to themselves, or they hear other people tell to them, it's a death sentence. Because I can imagine being born deaf or with disabilities, you probably could easily take advantage of that and say, oh, I cannot hear, please help me, and basically take excuses. And in your situation is basically no excuses, focus on the solution, and work with the biggest integrity to provide the best outcome for your clients, which is perfectly said. What makes you the happiest? When you help them get rid of the pain. So I think that's pretty amazing. Do you sometimes, in your example, can help people when they're losing hope? So what do you do when you have a client and because you went through it, that you just have to not give up and work really hard to do it? But do people maybe listen to you more with belief, because you went through it, and you say, never give up, keep fighting, keep working, it's worth it?
That's an interesting one, because just the reason I say that is because in some aspects, I'm still learning to adapt my positives in other ways. So yes, there's a lot of things that I have managed to push through, and I am doing very, very strongly. There are certain things that I'm trying to still learn to take those strengths into other areas that I'm battling with. Funny enough, when it comes to clients where it's a bit difficult and things are a bit hard, I unfortunately tend to take it a little bit too personally. And it sometimes becomes I can't help them, I'm not doing things right. And I'm having to learn to change that a little bit. However, with my students, I'm the opposite. I can encourage my students really, really well. And that I know that I can do, because I know the technique works. So it's a different thing. I know that the course, I know the technique, I know the course outcomes, I know what I've gotten from the course outcomes and the positives from there. So it's a bit more structured for me. So students that are having a hard time or they're finding it really difficult, and I can relate to them on that, and I can say to them, guys, you can do this. It's practice. Just keep practicing, just push through, know this, understand that. I'm here, I can help you. I know I figured it all out on my own, and I did. I really did. I didn't ask for a lot of help in level one. Um, I there were a couple of sort of tearful moments on in a heap on the floor where my fiance trying to remind me, and he goes, Anna, how long has David been doing this for? And I go, oh, I don't know, 20 years or more. And he's like, okay, how long have you been doing this for? Only about a month. Exactly. You have to take into account that you've only been doing this for a month. You
Yeah.
gotta keep going. So I had an amazing support from now husband. At the time he was my fiance, and who really helped keep my perspective on the fact that we are all gonna get there as students, and we are all gonna reach the point that your instructors or your practitioners that have been doing it for a number of years, the experience comes, and we just have to give ourselves some value and some credit that we can do it, we can get there, despite the fact that it's quite tough along the way. And it's the perseverance, it's the practice, it's the consistency and the determination to push through that you do actually get it. And if you don't understand something or you're really struggling with something, definitely don't do what I did. Reach out. I know, Ziggy, you've mentioned that to me before. And the more you reach out and the more you recognize that the help is there, and it's okay to not know it all after the course. It's okay to take time to learn. And the more we can give ourselves that time and patience, the better we are going to come on the other side. I must say I had a good laugh on the first course when I delivered that, where I said to all my students, please guys watch the level one videos after the course. There is a lot of useful information. I only watched them a month before I taught the course. I didn't watch them when I learned level one, and it would have helped me a lot at that time. So yeah, the more we can give ourselves the help along the way, the better and the faster we're going to be able to be better practitioners.
How did you find this process of being a practitioner and now becoming an official instructor for South Africa? And how is that learning curve for you? Do you get a bigger picture now, or how is it helping your work now that you're also the instructor?
For me, I love it. It's absolutely amazing.
We can see that in your discussion, so I can see that energy. So
It is incredible. It definitely has helped me understand the work more. The more we try to help teach or help others, the more we understand what we're actually doing. The learning curve was, yeah, I suppose, challenging and a little bit scary in some ways, where I mean, David is amazing. We've spoken of it before, where he has an incredible way of, or an amazing way to judge people. Not judge people, but to recognize people. And he sees good traits, or he sees traits in people. He's got an incredible way of looking at that. And He, yeah, he gave me an open book basically, and it was beautiful. It was, Ayla, here you go, make it happen. Pretty much the same as my friend that helped with the course. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. And yeah, it was an incredible level of freedom. It was amazing, but at the same time, it was the standard that I wanted to set for NKT. So I suppose my transition from practitioner to instructor was pretty much my own drive, my own push on the level that I wanted to deliver. And I did do a lot of prep work. I went over the Vimeos quite a few times to really make sure that I was up to standard with the work. I re-studied the muscle test videos, the online muscle test videos, and I did that so that I could have I wanted the ease of ability that the other instructors gave. So I used the other instructors as my role models. And I went, okay, I like that trait. I like that quality that one instructor had. I like that the other instructor gave. Okay, I'm going to bring that in. The other thing that I did do, and I knew that I could depend on or look at, is I involved my assistants quite a lot in the course. So as I was going and we were talking about certain things or examples, I asked the assistant, what was your experience on this? What have you landed up with? How have you ran into this situation, or how have you dealt with it? And it brought an incredible amount of extra, I suppose, experience into the course, which I feel I really enjoyed. So it wasn't only dependent on me. Even though, yes, I'm an instructor and I'm delivering the work and I know the work, I don't know everything. And so I loved being able to bring my assistants' knowledge and their experience into the course. And I mean, we ran into one point on the first course where I completely forgot and wasn't managing to make sense of the vastus test, the quad test, the vastus lateralis and the vastus medialis. And I couldn't work it out and it was getting confusing. And I was like, okay, guys, we're taking a break. Everyone go have tea. I pulled my assistant together. We rewatched the video. And I said, okay, we're clearing this up. We rewatched the video. And I said, okay, cool. We've all got this. We were all on the same page. And I said, okay, call the students back. And then I taught it to them. And it was actually okay. Again, it was like, all right, well, it's my first time. I'm not going to get all of this perfect. So I've got the tool to be able to find out what I need to. We fixed the problem. We've got the solution. The student got the knowledge that they needed. And it was awesome.
You proactively find the solution. So that's a really fascinating story. So excellent job. Excellent job.
It's an interesting one. I think just thinking on it, a lot of that came from, so growing up, I did a lot of theatre as well, and a lot of performances. And so, yes, I suppose in a lot of ways that taught me don't ever show or really let up that you've made a complete mistake. So obviously in the course I had to kind of go, okay, guys, I don't really know this, but again, it wasn't a freak out, like you say. And yes, I must say a lot of my theatre work did contribute to that, where often I used to cover up for the other students or the other actors. So I ended up learning the whole script off by heart because we go over it so much. I learned everyone's lines, and I was very good at improvising and filling in the spaces and making up stories along the way until the other actors remember their line. And yeah, it definitely gave me a good quality on being able to keep things going and to have a solution.
One question. So I know David said that he advised you to speak about your hearing impediment, about your deficits to your students when they come to learn NKT from you. So, what was their response to your, because a lot of the times people are there anybody surprised, or that somebody who has troubles hearing is actually teaching the stuff really good? Are they surprised? How do you find their reactions when they come to learn from you?
Um, I don't think particularly surprised, other than understanding. They were actually understanding. So I said to them, yes, look, I've got a hearing disability, so I might have to ask you guys to repeat. And it's more letting them know what the situation is. I also informed them that one of my assistants would help me if I had any trouble. Um, and otherwise, I just had to remind them to pull their mask down, unfortunately, when they were talking. So, but again, it was okay. It was more just some of them would remember and would slip into it easily. Others would start the conversation, and I would have to just go, okay, hang on, wait, bring the mask down. Oh, okay. And they pull the mask down, and then they carry on talking. So, yeah, I would say understanding in a lot of ways, not particularly there wasn't huge feedback on a surprise. There was lovely feedback on the fact that they really enjoyed the course. They loved the way that I did teach and interact with them. And yeah, so that's probably about all I can think of for now.
What I've learned from you today is focus your mind, your energy on the solution, no excuses. And there is a myth that no matter what disability you have, it doesn't have to determine your future. And I think that's an amazing finish to our conversation. I will write that down, and I will say, like, by Ayla, living by example. And I will finish with the words of David Weinstock. I remember he said, and I would read his words from the interview. He said about you, she is fantastic instructor. Why, might you ask? Because she has had to work so much harder than almost anyone I know to make herself into the person that she is. To me, that is beautiful, and I respect that. And thank you so much for your honesty, so that we can see maybe in a backstage of the whole process, how did you developed into the person you are. And what I hear and what I see, it's just the beginning. And I think you're on fire, and I don't know if anybody's going to stop you. And I would also like to congratulate on not having fiance anymore and getting married. So it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
So
it was.
you're a newlywed, and congratulations also from
Thank
me,
you.
and I'm sure from all the NKT family as well. So welcome to the new role as a wife. Is it true? Is it true? Is everything changed? What's your 14 weeks inside?
No, I can't change. It's still lovely. I think I have to apparently live more as a wife first.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ayla, for your time. It was a lovely talking to you, and I'm just disappointed that you're in South Africa and I'm in Europe. and we cannot easily connect. But I will just mention at the very end, we were actually at Zagreb Thomas's course, palpation and muscle testing, and we were not aware of each other. And it was so funny. It was so funny. We were actually the whole weekend we were at the same course, and I have not noticed you, and you haven't noticed me. And I'm sure if you would be in the first row with the, I need to hear this more, we would all know you. But that was also an interesting course. If you talk a few words, I remember you said you had the problem with the hearing aid.
Yes, I had one hearing aid that decided not to work on that course. So yes, I did have to make do with only one hearing aid, which made it quite a bit harder.
Amazing. But I bet that the years you didn't use hearing aid developed an experience that helped you overcome the not working of the hearing aid at the Zagreb course,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
I think everything comes with the meaning, or everything comes with a reason, whatever comes to life. So thank you again. It was lovely talking to you, and miles of smiles from Europe to South Africa, from Slovenia to South Africa.
Thank you so much, Siga. It was really awesome. Thank you for adding me in.